Right, so thank you everybody for attending and being on time. Speaking of time, I think I actually have a meeting at 11 where I have to be, so I wanted to leave at 10 to 11. I think with our program we should probably be done by then. I think that would be my goal, if you all agree. So I declare the meeting open. We have received the agenda. I think that we are all here actually, so Maurice and I as members, we have Christian as our expert, Mrs. Chang as the authorized management, Marc, Benoit and Mrs. Ma, so we are all...
Actually it's Mrs. Can you...
sorry, then I have to change that on my...
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Mrs. Fengren.
That's what I thought. I thought I cannot recognize anymore. So thank you for clarifying.
Very good. So I think the first item on the agenda were the minutes from the last meeting.
So I prepare also some slides to support the presentation.
Thank you. So I think we have our minutes. There was a revised version, I think, which you should all have in front of you. I made a few additional comments yesterday. Should we just turn the pages to make sure that we are all in agreement? So we have our matters arising, that's page 2. I had a few questions, but they were all satisfactorily answered by Marc. Page 3. Those were the main points which we discussed last time with the credit risk indicators. Page 4. Yes, I had a question there on the operational risk policy, because the minutes say that the BRC members agreed to send their additional comments within 2 days after the meeting. I think that I did send some comments just before the meeting, so that
all
is
the
all.
Comments were incorporated in the version you have approved at the board level.
Okay, so that was all done later at the board. Okay.
If you want, I can update this information.
Well, maybe we can we could put a footnote saying the final policy was approved at the board with the date. Okay. So if you agree, I think we can approve the minutes.
I will next board. I will circulate for signature.
Yeah. Or we can, if you do it by tomorrow, we can also sign it after.
And you will come tomorrow, right?
Yeah, after the audit meeting.
I had made a minor comment. Which
yes.
I don't know, I think it must have slipped there's in 212, sorry, there's a sentence that says that I suggested that in some other banks such black light is in place to inform the board that an action should, I wanted to simplify that sentence to saying Mr. Shark suggested that a black light be put in place to inform the board that an action plan has been activated. Can I pass this to you? I found the sentence a bit difficult to read, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think on that, and we see that when we look at the Q3 report, the issue with the lights, I think, remains the same, and the bank is working on it.
Sure.
So it's something which is in good hands, I would say.
Good.
Then I think next point is the risk committee charter. We had this charter when we started our committee last year, and I suggested that we should look at it at least in the beginning once a year to see whether there were any comments. I did some I made some proposed changes to simplify it a little bit. I think that Christian, you looked at it as well.
I think my changes are also in there. I'm looking at
it's
I haven't compared it, but I think it's fine.
There is still a question
There is
mark.
still a couple of question marks.
Yes. Well, let's look at the question mark then. I think that's in the section 1, where it starts, the risk committee shall deliberate on a regular basis on, and then there's the 4th point, which says the adequacy of the risks incurred with the current and future banks' ability to manage these risks. And I think I made the question mark to say, is the word adequacy correct?
I think I did.
Oh, you did it. Sorry.
Yes, I didn't understand the sentence, so I was wondering what we mean here by the adequacy of the risks.
Just, I think the main idea behind is to make sure that the bank is really acting within the limits, the regulation, the funds at its disposal, and also taking into account the results of the stress testing, especially on the liquidity stress testing. So all this information you should recognize or agree or evaluate whether we are in line with these type of limits or facts or figures.
So it's in the
I
sense appropriate.
understand what you mean. I think if we want to make it clearer, in fact, we should almost just turn it the other way around. The adequacy of the current and future bank's ability to manage blah 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 with the risk incurred. That's what we mean, and that is matching of the risk with the ability to control, monitor them.
Well, if you look at the preceding point, that's in fact already, the preceding point says the risk situation, its future development, and its adequacy with the risk strategy. So then we look at what is the risk today,
forward-looking maybe,
and the future development, and we say, is that in line with our strategy? But I wonder whether in the...
Right, and then it gets more, so to speak, granular, because we talk about own funds, liquidity reserve.
But I think whether we should not delete the words, the adequacy of the risks incurred with. So that what we are checking is the current and future bank's ability to manage these risks.
Because it is more a snapshot, I think. It is current situation.
Yeah.
And then the strategy is more forward-looking. It says, okay, are we capable to sustain this strategy?
But I think in terms of the sentence, I think if we delete the adequacy, saying the adequacy of the risks incurred with, if you simply delete that until with, and you say, what are we doing? Because the sentence in the beginning says the committee shall deliberate on a regular basis, and then we say the current and future bank ability to manage these risks. Because we have looked at them, then we say, can the bank manage these risks? For example, if today we're looking at our credit exposures, we see the large exposures, and then we say, can the bank, we would have to ask ourselves, is the bank equipped to manage these risks?
So it would be the adequacy of the current.
No. I would delete everything. I would simply say the current and future. I think that doesn't hurt. The current and future bank's ability to manage these risks. Is that something you can live with, Mark?
Of course. Yes.
Okay. Then I think the next question mark we had, there was still brackets on page 5, or at least on my page 5. We are now in section 3, Roman 3.1. 5th point, the risk management plan should consider. And there I think the question is probably, is the word plan correct?
Page 5.
Page 4.
Yeah, section 3, responsibilities and duties, enterprise responsibilities, plan. Or is it policy? No, plan, risk management.
Plan is more
I understand it as the plan of work.
Plan of work.
I think this one is yours.
Makes sense for us. It's a plan of work.
Okay.
Should be part of the plan.
Okay, well then we simply delete. I can live with the plan now that I read it. I think that's probably okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably
okay. And then we have a last point. That's then a little bit further down. Romans 3:2 reporting. we have the second point: respond to reports from management, so that management understands the importance placed on such report by the risk committee, and how the risk committee views its content. Isn't that to say we are reacting on?
I didn't understand the sentence. I think is why I put a question mark there.
But isn't that the analysis which we are doing when we are looking at now the Q3 report? And so we will respond to. Or is it challenge or discuss the reports?
Exchange maybe.
Exchange on the reports from management.
It's more in the sense that there is a bridge between the risk committee and the management of the bank, I think.
For me, this was sort of self-evident and a bit paternalistic that the BRC would make sure that management understands that it
the importance
of the reports. I don't think there's any doubt of that. Now, maybe the regulators wants to read something like that, but frankly, I think one could strike that whole bullet point, or just say exchange on reports from management on risk or something.
I think
it's the second part of the sentence that bothered me a bit. So that management understands the importance placed on such reports. Yeah. It's like management doesn't understand this. I think.
Yeah, let's simplify it and let's say respond to reports from management. Because I think that's what we, if management reports something and we are.
Mark, is that okay for you?
Respond and exchange on reports from management.
Report and exchange.
Yeah.
Because there is nowhere a place where there is a kind of bridge between the two bodies. It is more a board committee, so of course it's obvious that you support the board activity, but also the link to the management is interesting.
So you'd say respond to and exchange on reports from management on risk matters or something like that. Which reports are we talking about here?
The risk.
I think it can be more than just the quarterly reports. It's also the.
But like you say, everything, all the reports relating to risk.
Yeah. Because what is decided at the board level has an influence on the management as well. So.
Okay, then leave it open.
Respond and exchange. Respond to and exchange to report.
Exchange on. That's what we're saying.
On report.
Yes, I think to some extent it may be a little bit a repetition. If you in the preceding section we have already discussed with senior management and management of banks' major risk exposures.
So I think we just delete it.
I think we can delete it.
Agree.
Okay.
Sorry, I have agreed.
Thank you for that. So I think with these changes we should approve the changes to the committee charter. The committee charter, in the report which we will make to the board, I think that we will say that we have reviewed it, but I think the board probably doesn't need to approve it as such, but the board will be informed of the changes. Or is that okay?
You need to approve that.
Has it been approved last time?
Yes, I think it's been approved last time, so the changes on
okay, if you still have time to put it on the board to come in December, then we should probably then say...
Yes, we have time for this.
Okay.
Even if it's, I would say, light comments, not significant change?
I think as a rule, if we look at what the terms of reference say, that there are things that need to be approved,
Yeah.
even if there are minor changes. I think just for the form, rather
Yes,
than
it's the parallelism of the forms. Basically,
Yeah.
you have approved every time you
Yeah.
will approve, because it will
Changes.
change,
Yeah.
even if it's
I think-
minor.
And
At
we-
least we have something clear in the back and
I mean, it's
track
it's a committee established by
Yeah,
the board,
you're
so
right.
it cannot modify its own charter
Yeah.
without
Yes.
the board knowing about it.
That's right. So let's have the board approve it, and with a little bit of luck, we will not necessarily review it again next year because
Sorry,
Every
Mr.
year.
Chairman. First
no,
of all,
we are reviewing it every year, but we are not.
and the second thing is that we will have the new 12552. So incorporating the EBA on EBA guidelines. So it may well be that the Luxembourg approach will have to be taken into consideration.
That's another point. But I think okay. So we approve the changes, and we suggest that the board approves them, so they will be presented to the board, and the board will be asked to approve it. Okay. That's point number 2. Then I think we're coming to our report for Q3. Mark, if you want to go through it.
Of course. Thank you for taking this Q3 report. So you will note some positive change to this report, not maybe on the presentation because we are working on this hard limits. Just maybe to summarize what are hard limits. It's of course a regulation that imposes on the FCR and SFR large exposure, but I will touch this point a little bit later on. And also, of course, on head office limits on the non-performing reserve for our corporate credit activities. But when you turn on page 2, you have the capital adequacy ratio, the CAR, and the profitability. As you can see, we are perfectly in line with the regulation. And of course, these are the figures at the end of September. In the meantime, of course, the subordinated loan has significantly increased the own funds of the bank, and the capital adequacy ratio has significantly increased also from 13 something percent. Now we are about 16.5% for capital adequacy ratio. So as you can see, the leverage ratio is also comfortable. On the next page 3, what is significant in the third quarter is that there are 3 points. First, the concentration limits for the D-class country. So the D-class country are, I would say, just before the forbidden countries, the high-risk countries. It has increased to 5%, but as you can see, we are still very comfortable, but because we are only at 0.42%. So of course the indicator is green, but just for your information to report is of course head office guidelines. You know that we are making sure that we can rate all of our customers. So we had a certain backlog in the past, so we try to remove this backlog. So we are now capable not just to give a A4 per definition by default to the unrated clients, so we can have a more precise view on the credit portfolio. And of course, as usual, the credit exposure to a single customer or group connected customer shall exceed 25% of our own funds. This is of course a hard limit as I mentioned. So globally the credit activities increased in the Q3. So it's about 1.7 billion syndicated loan and 1.5 billion for bilateral loans. Where still, of course, some concentration risks are still present because the portfolio is not that big, but as you will see, the concentration risks are declining.
May I ask, didn't you mention to me that Portugal had changed categories?
Yes, I'm going to...
Okay, you're coming back then.
Yes, as you can see for the famous, one of our famous indicator, country exposure rating C, as you can see on this table. It was in the past in the red zone, because we don't accept more than 10% on this category. But now suddenly, as you can see, the concentration
No, it's still red.
It's still red. That's why I'm.
is 0.57, so it's almost.
Wait.
But you have two lines. If you look at it, the
Country exposure C is red on the chart that I have in front.
it's still at 14.11 in the first column. There are two columns.
The first column is
That's true. That's
quarter.
true. Okay.
Good.
Comparison.
Thank you. Yeah.
From the last quarter.
Yes.
And on the right side you have the Q3.
Good.
And you can see this red point has completely disappeared because Portugal has now been rated by head office B rated country. So suddenly there's the magic of the assessment of our head office to move this. I think it's a very fair assessment of the country because
it's in line with what's going on.
What's going on? The situation has significantly improved, and head office recognized these aspects. There are many other aspects that it's taken into consideration. So there is a very spectacular disappearance of this black indicator.
Good.
Other things to mention. Here also on the prudent support, concentration risk on the industry. So we have also improved the situation. So we are approaching this maximum of 15%. So we have also significantly decreased the pressure on this indicator. The indicator on the prudent support individual has also disappeared. So the situation has improved. The same goes for the investment grade, but it's also due to the better rating of our credit proposals. So over the time, the situation has improved. And the last one is the concentration risk of the term. We have also improved the situation, so we hope to be soon on the amber zone. We are still above 70%, but the situation has improved, continues to improve. So these are pretty good news on these indicators.
Can you explain to me again the prudent support indicator? What that exactly says?
Prudent support is a type of industry that are categorized as a prudent to invest.
Okay.
So it's a more stable industries compared to can be either the overcapacity industries or certain type of industry that are a little bit more risky.
Yes, but why?
It's called prudent support. From what I understand, there are some industries where Bank of China really wants to develop, and then there are some where it absolutely does not want to be in, and this is sort of the grey zone where you're willing to stay in, but prudently.
Okay.
So there's a maximum.
Okay,
there's a maximum concentration that you accept.
I wanted to, because if it's something prudent, then you should be happy. If you're
it's acting prudent.
We want to be careful on these, from what I understand. No?
Yeah, but we should have a little bit of also.
And what is typically part of that industry? Is it tobacco or?
It is. It can be industries that are not yet on the overcapacity. Overcapacity in China is still glass, aluminium, and so on. But the prudent is maybe more risky industries. It can be
solar energy,
could be shipping,
maybe solar energy. Yeah, typically. Yeah. That are not yet mature or fierce competition or not so or too volatile maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to put a little bit of emphasis on the next page 4, on the single customer large exposure with our Luxembourg SA. So there is this clear regulation that we should not be exposed more than 25% of our own funds. So own funds are around 560 million today, 559 million for the year, thanks to this subordinated loan. And we list now the top 10 exposure. So as you can see, before mitigation, the percentage of these exposure are not breaching the 25%, even if you have one that is very close to 25%, but we breach none of them. And I will give you a little explanation of all these clients, because some clients may be not so clear for you. So thanks to Feng Yuan on my side has listed a little bit this type of industry, because of course we all know Goodyear. I'm not going to tell you Telecom Italia, it's quite obvious, but we have some other clients. EU Pharma, of course, it's pharmaceutical and medicines manufacturing. For this type of loan, we have a guarantee from BOC Shandong branch. So it's a Neba Waidai, this one? Yeah, Neba Waidai, so it's a very strong guarantee from our Bank of China.
And that is probably why under mitigation it disappeared.
Yeah.
So it's because it's a Bank of China risk rather than anything else. Probably.
Yeah, we cannot say that because I had, for your information, I opened a little bit the bracket here. I had a meeting yesterday with the CSSF for 3 hours. And a representative from the CSSF was also a former credit expert.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a very long discussion about mitigation factors and everything. So
is mitigation is a guarantee enough to remove it? Yeah,
to cover, it fully covers the exposure.
Yeah, sometimes.
What does who does the guarantor have to be able to remove
this
it?
typical case, it's called in Chinese a Neba Waidai. So it's really a loan that is fully guaranteed by a Bank of China, generally a province. Can be Beijing, can be Shandong, can be.
Because basically
but my question is this: if the rule is you cannot exceed 25% of own funds, and I come along and I said, don't worry, I'll guarantee it, that's obviously not going to be sufficient. So what is the quality of the guarantor that's required to be able to use it as a mitigating factor?
No, there they do not exceed 25.
They do not exceed.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. They cannot exceed.
But that was my question. If you had 26%,
no, it cannot be.
It cannot be.
Okay, so you cannot mitigate. You cannot mitigate it even with a good guarantee.
I think what we are saying here, it reflects the nature of the activity of the SA in terms of booking of loans.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of loans, if I may call it like that, they are being booked here, and to enable them to be booked here, there's the guarantee from different Bank of China entities.
But in any case,
that I understand. What I was trying to get at is whether that 25% own funds, in my understanding, that's a hard limit.
Yeah, that's a hard limit.
So the mitigation is not that we can mitigate a breach.
Yeah.
The mitigation is
the
that
risk.
The risk is in reality not 25% of our own funds, because we have a 24.94% of our own funds, because we have a bank guarantee against.
So if we're looking at the limit, we have to ignore the mitigation. The mitigation is actually
it is for
information for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So briefly, I'll go through the list. Chenming, it's paper and paper products manufacturing. It's also, we have also typically Neba Waidai by BOC Shandong. And typically the guarantee over there is a pledge of liquid cash. So these companies are clients of this province, BOC Shandong province, and this province pledge the cash of these clients to guarantee a loan that we can make. Goodyear, it's rubber and plastic product manufacturing. Galp, it's a new client from Portugal. Oil and gas. I don't know if you're familiar with this brand in the Iberic region. Wolf Immobilier in Poland, so it's in Poland. It's rental and leasing, but for real estate. Telecom Italia, it's self-explanatory. Geely. Behind Geely, you have the famous Volvo brand that is excellent cars, but performing very well. It's a motor vehicle manufacturing. Adinan, it's an e-commerce platform in Poland. So they are a leader on the Poland market for telecom, but also electronics, home, health company. Pier Holding is a supermarket chain in Netherlands. Sale Investment, it's also supermarket, but this time in Poland. Huotong Romeo, it's a firm investing in the Portugal gas. It's a syndication loan. And Mota Angel, it's also a famous Portuguese BTP, civil engineering construction. Just to give you a little bit, Mota Angel is on the right side because the power reference, New Pharma disappeared. So we also list the top 10 after mitigation.
Martin, all these loans here, all of them are guaranteed?
It depends.
By
Generally, they are guaranteed, yes. In this case, all are guaranteed.
All are guaranteed.
Pledge can be shares, pledge on liquid cash.
Yeah. But how many of these are guaranteed by another BOC entity?
3.
Okay. And how are these guarantees priced?
We, if it's in the same currency, we expect the guarantee for principal and interest, of course.
No, but how do you pay for that guarantee?
We don't pay, we receive the guarantee.
No, I know you receive it, but why would someone guarantee something? There must be an economic element.
Economic element is that, of course, they bear the risk, so they take most of the margin, and we take a little bit of the margin, but we have no exposure.
But that's the price.
That's the price.
Okay, and from a risk point of view, there is no transfer pricing element.
No.
It's at arm's length, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
So the margins on these are
lower,
much lower.
Generally 50-60 bips instead of generally minimum 150, 150, depends on
It's an excellent question, though. I think do you have any of the big four look at your transfer pricing?
Why would there be transfer pricing here? Because these are loans which are made by the subsidiaries. And they receive... Are you speaking of guarantees from Bank of China?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that those are at arm's length and that they're market compliant. Otherwise,
there is a
you violate the OECD transfer pricing rules.
There's been extensively reviewed several times over the years by different big fours several times, and because of course as the regulation is changing, sometimes also the sub-branch by the branches of the SA are also on their own doing such an independent review. On top of that, we have also our external revisor that is checking this on an annual basis also. So
that was my question. So it is somebody's looking at this and is certifying that.
It is more, of course, I would say, more legal or compliance question. But for what I've understood, yes. But you can. This is, of course, a very hot question, hot topic for the moment in. One of the hot topics.
But it's important for tax compliance reasons, because otherwise eventually you may get into trouble with either the Luxembourg tax authority or some other tax authority.
Yes, of course, but I believe the tax authority is quite in favor that we do also more business of this type here, because we book and we pay tax here as well. So I don't know.
No,
not a specialist.
Yeah, but as long as you're
making profit.
We're making profit with this, so we pay more tax and more.
Okay.
But I'm not the best specialist on this topic.
I think it's important for the committee and the board, your board,
Yes.
to have an assurance that and
This issue has been raised.
In fact, the reason
this is
I'm
done and done, so.
mentioning it again, because over time we have had the issue of arm's length pricing between the subsidiary and the branch, Luxembourg branch. But we have not really been very specific about relationship with other Bank of China branches. We have mainly focused on relationship between SA and Luxembourg branch.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are talking about cases where it's a relationship between SA and
The group entity.
another group entity. That's why I'm raising this point, just to make sure we are coherent
Mm-hmm.
with the way we are approaching it.
Again, from my discussion yesterday with the CSSF, it is the case for 99% of the banks. They receive guarantee from their mother company for certain loans, and they book it in Luxembourg.
No, that I have. Obviously, that's why I say that business is like a. I don't like to see it that way, but a booking office. They do it, but what is important is the way that relationship is managed in terms of who gets what out of the share of the cake.
And on top of that, they insisted also that we should really not just accept it as a granted case.
Of course.
We should perform the due
Credit
diligence,
review,
which is the case now for the last, I would say, almost 2 years, 18 months. That risk is systematically involved in such deals. Because some deals are a little bit, sometimes exotic. I remember I found one by chance, or I don't know. It was financing a movie in Hong Kong for a famous film, but the first source of repayment was the success on the box office. So, sorry, I was extremely pissed off first, and I immediately rejected this type of proposals because they say no, we have a guarantee, and the CSSF is fully not in favor of such a proposal.
Yes.
So we do the due diligence now. And it happens that sometimes we reject something that is obvious for us. We receive a guarantee, but the first source of repayment is not there. So we cannot legitimately accept.
Yeah, but I assume that these loans also have other guarantees other than the parent company. Because the parent company is taking a guarantee somewhere.
That's the problem of mainland China.
We don't know.
For us, we don't see it. Because it's generally the business is introduced by
Yes.
our mother company in China.
That's right, but to the extent that you are the lender in a normal situation, you must be the one who receives the guarantees.
Yes.
Not from the parent, but they look at the pharma group. They are going to make a loan to this pharma group, and they are going to say, I need some form of guarantee. So they will have the subsidiary. They will have the borrower to agree, for example, that all its subsidiaries counter guarantee this loan. These guarantees must be given to the lender. They are not given to the.
If I may,
Yes.
because I should be very frankly, I am not in charge of this area, so maybe I am not in a very good position explaining all the logic behind this kind of business. Firstly, to my knowledge, of all this kind of business, it is a very common kind of patterns for all the overseas registers are doing that before. So I remember before the years 2015. It is one of the pillar of the business of doing that. And I don't think at the time people have the questions about this transferring pricing things because it has been actually questioning or asking questions by the people before. So nobody asking at the time. It doesn't mean that nobody noticed that. I think must solve this problem or this kind of questions. And then I think in 2015, 2014, this is not the case because it's not profit anymore, so we don't do that. The bank's actually closing that kind of business. And we have the people changing. New people, they don't do this. Only, I think, for the past 1 or 2 years, they began to redoing this kind of business again.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is, I asked my colleagues before, what's the logic so that we can give you the satisfied answers about all the questions you are asking. But I don't think it's going to be a problem. Secondly, the guarantee is not coming from the group. So it is not coming from the parent side. It's coming to the other brothers and sisters domestic branches.
Okay.
So that is the way they are doing things. All the due diligence responsibilities actually is by us, I mean by our Luxembourg branches. It doesn't mean because they give us the guarantees and we don't do that. I think that is only reduce the risk because we have that full guarantee, and for becoming, it is a very mature patterns, business patterns for all the Bank of China's domestic and overseas branches. So I don't think the way of doing that create any severe risk like on the market thing. So that's why they reduce the risk rating about doing that business. But what you're asking, I think is important. I need to find all those answers or ask my colleagues to do that and provide you a reasonable answer on all of these. Whatever it is, I do appreciate that question you're raising here because it will let us review those, something we take it for granted. That's something I think is important. But it's not coming from the parents, I think.
Okay, no, that's I think well understood. What I think would be interesting to hear at some point then in the future is, okay, you're now doing a certain due diligence on the borrower. So you look at them, and the question is, does that also include a review of the security which the borrower and its group are giving either to you or to the brother or sister bank who is guaranteeing it? So how that is that also entering into the element? Because I think if the CSSF, for example, is telling you we think that you should not take the risk for zero if you have a guarantee of one of your sister banks, you should look at the risk itself and see whether it is a risk which you are willing to take. I think the example which you gave was of the Hong Kong film was clear. That's a risk which Bank of China Luxembourg doesn't want to take. But I think that even beyond that, if you say this is a risk, pharma risk, which I'm going to take, I think this look at the balance sheet, it's a healthy group. The question is, are you also looking at the security package which goes with it? Because not all of these loans, I think if you make loans of up to 100 million, sometimes they may just be unsecured loans, but most of the time I would say they would be somehow secured loans.
Of course, we focus on the first source of repayment for every single proposal. So that's for sure. If we're not satisfied by this first source of repayment, we reject.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Second, the guarantee, of course, in this case is very, very, very strong. The strongest guarantee is, of course, to have the cash in our accounts and the accounts being pledged, of course. That is the best guarantee you can have. But in this case here, it is an extremely strong guarantee. Let's imagine now, we don't have this guarantee, but we have some other type of guarantee, a mortgage on some real estate in China. How will you enforce this? It will be extremely difficult to, we have to declare a default, we have to go through the courts, we have to pay lawyers to support our activities for getting this guarantee back and so on. It can take ages and so on. Here in this case, we have very, very little cases where we call for this guarantee from BOC province. Very, very little cases, but it can happen. But in this time, in this case, within days, it's closed. You know, they pay us, full stop. And then after, they go back to the company to get the cash back from their accounts or to enforce and claim the money back to their clients in China. Yeah. So it's very, very strong. So of course, we to a certain extent, we love this type of business.
Yeah.
But we focus on the first source.
Are these back-to-back loans then? Because I'm trying to understand if you extend a loan to a Chinese company, and let's say that Chinese company gives you some collateral, a mortgage or some. I fully understand the point that for the bank in Luxembourg it may be almost more comfortable to have from a high-quality bank a garantie à première demande.
Irrevocable.
I'm not sure what you call it.
First demand guarantee.
First demand guarantee from Bank of China. Sounds to me like it's easier to call that guarantee than to execute the security. But what I'm wondering, if the contract, the loan contract, is it signed between Bank of China Luxembourg and
yes,
GD?
Of course.
In which case, I suppose all the other collaterals are also, or guarantees are also included in the contract, in the agreement.
That was my question, but I wonder whether it's not
You cannot double guarantee something.
No,
not necessarily.
I think the
So
Chinese
it's like a tripartite agreement.
No. I think we make a loan which is unsecured, and the only guarantee we get
at the
is
same
Bank
time
of China
we
province.
get the guarantee.
And
from
the Bank of China province will be counter-guaranteed by the parent of this pharma company in China. So they will take another collateral in China. And so if ever our debtor doesn't pay, Bank of China province pays us, and they go after the parent in China. That's, I think, how it works.
Which is, for this bank, more comfortable than if it had to go itself after.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen situations like that in Russia where, I mean, you don't want to have to go and collect from some company in Novosibirsk. In China it might be easier, but still, I mean, it's a big country and it's difficult for the Luxembourg bank to go get the collateral. Where I'm wondering if the only thing that bothers me a bit is that means you're going to have huge guarantees from your parent or your sisters. I mean, basically the guarantees provided by the group. Do we tally those two?
As Madame Zhang said, this business is at a certain period of time there were no more of this business. You're right, 15, 16, a little bit 17, no, very little. Sometimes one or two for small amounts, because by definition they are short-term, also important, very short-term guarantee, 1 year. Bawada is 1 year.
My question is quite simple. Do we have? I mean, here we say 25% is our capital limit. That is obviously for third parties. Most banks have huge exposure on their parent. But it would be interesting to also know what the exposure in terms of guarantees, for instance, is.
I think it's
the broadest sense of
the China problem. They have to also collect all the guarantees they give, and they have to report that to their own regulator as well.
But it's your problem here because I mean, there have been banks folding, and I'm not saying that Bank of China is at any risk of. But I think you do have significant guarantees both from the mother and from, I suppose, sister banks.
What do you mean, significant guarantees?
If a lot of these loans here are counter-guaranteed by
there are not so many.
Bank of China. Okay, but that's my question.
The biggest are.
Could we also have maybe for information the exposure in terms of guarantees?
Exposure to them.
Well, we have it if we know what the loans are that we get.
Yeah, but there are so many overseas entities. So all these provinces are probably giving this guarantee to other Bank of China overseas.
No. Our exposure.
It's all about. Forget a minute whether it's bank. I think what we're trying to get to here is to say, okay, there might be many, but it's always useful to know the exposure that we as a bank, I would start to say, to have to the group as a whole, to group entities, because it's an exposure to related parties. I'm not saying it would be in breach of anything, but it's a useful information to have.
And to start to record and to report just to see evolution.
And to see because you know, at the end of the day, it gives us, not from a regulatory point of view, but from a business strategy point of view, it gives us an idea, because as part of our strategy, we say, as a bank, we want to be more independent from the group, and be, and therefore, if we see that the exposure to the group is increasing every year, it means somehow that we are not managing. Maybe I'm not saying maybe, but it's just good for the board to be aware of where the business comes from.
I will start to collect this type of information and report on a frequently basis to you and to the board, no problem.
And that is why we raised the point earlier. I think that is why the pricing element is important, because we must be coherent. You rightly say we have a very strong guarantee. For me, if we have a very strong guarantee,
we have very little margin.
Then we have very little margin. But at the same time, I do believe, forget regulation, but it's the right thing to do when giving a loan, whether it's guaranteed or not, to review the creditworthiness of the counterpart. And therefore, that to me is an element why we earn a margin, because otherwise, why would we, other than, the cash aspect, it's the work we do.
The work we do,
right.
Of course. We follow up also, we do.
And the other, you're saying there's many sister banks. In the end, if, I'm saying, Bank of China Henan has a major problem, the parent will bail it out. So I think from our point of view, it's reasonable to say what we're looking at is the overall group, not each individual entity, because I cannot imagine a bank such as Bank of China letting one of its subsidiary in the Chinese province default if something major would happen somewhere. So I think for us it's essentially a Bank of China risk, a group risk.
Yeah,
technically it may not be.
Yes, it is not only the groups itself, because when each of the overseas branches issue the guarantee, they also need to pass their local safe. So it doesn't mean that it's easy for them to give us the guarantee. If they don't have the money, even the state foreign exchange bureau not allow them. So each deal needs to be registered at the safe level. So it's at the
what is safe?
Safe, it's a state administration of foreign exchange.
Okay.
That's a safe.
Okay.
So, but they have not only have the state one, but it has all the provincial levels. Each guarantees of our domestic branches have to be registered, which means that the country needs to make sure that there's money in the future when they default or something happens. They have to get out of China because the foreign exchange control country. So my understanding is this is for the group. It's not something because they think I can get easy money from my overseas branches and I give you a guarantee. It is never going to be like that. And I think there is a reasons why the group support the overseas branches at the very beginning. At the very, I think, some early age, maybe 5 years ago, the group strongly support or recommend, encourage the overseas branches doing this kind of business. Because I think for the group itself, this is also the group's risk, and even we can upgrade it. It is a country risk. So it is not. For them, never thinking about anything else. It's just give you the guarantee, easily guarantee. And every time if there's something happen outside China, this is the top priority before anything happens there.
Yes.
So I think by now I never heard any of the state-owned Bank of China domestic branches has something for them because they have only one legal entity that they have. So I don't think there was anything wrong with that. But your set is right. We have to see both what the Chinese policy or their regulations and outside. Especially for us, since we have these local regulations, we have to make sure everything fully compliant with the local laws and regulations.
You just gave me another argument why we ought to earn a margin on this. There is always the risk that some capital control could be imposed in a very difficult economic situation. It has happened in other countries. I'm not expecting it to happen in China, but given that this is a transaction between an economy where there are capital controls or capital management actions in place. But even other economies, I mean, look at Greece in 2010. I mean, they were very severely limiting. So I think there is a small element of risk even in that guarantee. Not that Bank of China would not pay back, but that at some point there might be more difficulty moving money. It's happened before in other countries. It could happen here. It can happen in China. So I think it's reasonable for the bank to earn a margin on those transactions, even though they are counter-guaranteed by Bank of China.
Sure.
If we ever have to draw up an argument, how do you say?
Arguments
for the pricing.
Sure.
Then I think these kinds of arguments can be useful.
Yeah. Okay, I think that was.
You're right. That's I think why the balance of this kind of business going down, because it's not as a bankers and the people, our business people themselves also try to see if this can cover our cost or not and cover the cost of our risk or not. That's why it goes down. But I think it's the groups has its kind of KPI keep on changing all the time. So sometimes we also need to take into the EVA into account, and this kind of a business may give some credit on the other side. So that's why you can see some of this kind of business appears again. But you're right. We always need to look into.
I think.
If I make just one very quick, and I think this may cost the group in risk-weighted assets on both in this bank and I mean the fact that you give a guarantee to a subsidiary. In a subsidiary, you may be looking at nominal exposure to calculate risk-weighted assets, and at the other entity's level, the guarantee will come into your risk-weighted assets. So it's not always a very efficient way of. I mean, it's better obviously to have collateral that we have confidence in directly in Portugal, as opposed to getting a counter guarantee from the parent. So I suppose a lot of your business that you're trying to develop today is direct business in geographies where you actually.
We would rather do like that. That's why how we can develop the business. But at the same time, also need to think about the risk as a whole.
Okay, I think that was a very good discussion. We wanted to concentrate on large exposure, so it was alright to spend some time on it. And I think as a follow-up, it would indeed be good if we could have at some point information a little bit on what is our exposure to these types of loans to Bank of China and China in general. How are we remunerated, and are there questions of transfer pricing on these issues? I think that would be good to have that. Maybe now we should continue, otherwise we will have a timing problem. No, that's okay. Okay, very good.
So I propose we move quickly to the market risk indicators. The very usual red alert is because of the forex fluctuation. So nothing special to report compared to the previous explanation in the past. On the next page 7, there are no risk for this, the red alert. On the page 7, the new product approval activity. So we have approved in the third quarter 3 new products, but at the level of the bank, so we can approve such a product. It's an interest rate swap with an embedded option, so it's a combined product, a cap floor option. And also we do now, on behalf of the clients, we do the EMIR reporting for the clients.
That's only for Brussels branch, so you would not do EMIR.
These are typically, for Brussels, introduced this deal. The IRS deal is planned at the end of November. It will not happen. It will be probably December because there are a lot of documentation. I'm just getting updated this morning. Operational, legal and compliance risk, nothing to report. No incident for the SA in the quarter 2, so very good news. That's it for this. For the liquidity indicator, of course, on the consolidated basis, I disclose here the figures for the branch, but for the SA on the consolidated basis, of course, we are far above the required limits of 100% for the LCR. And for the NSFR as well. You know that it will be reported next time, but it's worth mentioning that the CSSF request us to start to report the NSFR calculation, which was not the case in the past, but now it's more the BCL pushing for that actually, all the banks. Of course, we feel extremely comfortable because we calculate the NSFR on a regular basis, but this time we also take the Basel III calculation model, which is much more conservative, and using this model we still reach 75% of the long-term strategic ratio for liquidity. So no problem. But of course I will give you more details next time. Nothing to report.
Head of Basel III as opposed to head office method.
Yes.
Okay.
Head office method is head office method, so it's they are actually computing the NSFRs themselves based on the figures we provide them, and they give us the results. But of course, if you take the strict Basel III methodology, which is more, and we take even more conservative assumptions on the model, we still reach 75%. And we will start to report
80% limits.
60%. Here it's 80% for the head office, but officially, because it's Q2 reporting, but I will tell you already that for Q4 we are using also the Basel methodology. 60% is the minimum requirement from the CSSF, and it will be reported for the first time 1st of January 2019. But we are already fully compliant, and it's calculated daily as well, like NSFR.
Okay, you're not a systemic bank. In systemic banks, these ratios now, I mean, the thresholds are now going up gradually to 100%. Do you have any indications of what requirements you have to satisfy going forward?
Talking to CSSF yesterday, they say they introduce this more and more, and they don't know.
Okay.
It will probably increase, like the LCR. You remember the time LCR was at 50 or 60% in 2011 or 2012, I don't remember. No, it's 100%. Okay. NSFR will probably increase, but probably at a lower pace, I think.
Am I wrong, Maurice, that for systemic banks, NSFR is already in force? I mean,
yes.
The thresholds are quite well defined, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed last time at the other bank.
Okay.
Okay. If you have no further questions, so we can move maybe to the next point.
Yeah.
Which is the new product point. So I will have here the slides are also on the screen if you want to follow on the screen. Let's talk about first the process. There's a little bit logic behind these committees to introduce you to the process before going to the policy itself, so you have a better understanding. So what is the key driver for this new policy? Because you have a policy behind, of course, so Bank of China New Product Management Policy 2017, and our product guidelines from Bank of China, but also at the level of Luxembourg, the famous CSSF 12552 subchapter for 7.3, which is the existing for a long time, but also the EBA guidelines now that are being introduced in this new policy. So just to reinforce the importance to manage properly the new products of a bank, especially defining the role of the compliance function. So it is more, I would say, more task for the compliance this time. So in brief, of course, on the internal governance side, when we're talking about a new product, we need to have a new product approval policy. So that's the next topic for this presentation. That defines exactly what is new product, that should be referring to all the process surrounding a new product, if you are talking about outsourcing arrangement, for instance, or systems, if you have a significant system change and so on. And of course, what is key is the consistency with the risk strategy and the risk appetite. Of course, if the bank introduces a new product, we must ensure that this product is in line with the appetite of the bank, and that everything is well controlled, which is the the second column here that says we should perform a very strict and strong risk assessment, not only on the technical infrastructure, the resource, making sure that people are capable to handle and to manage these products, but also the compliance function. So the compliance should make sure that this product is typically in line with the regulation, and I have immediately in mind the MiFID II regulation, especially when we're talking about products for individuals. So that is key, and that is a significant change. Of course, there are other changes, especially on our head office side. So we report to our head office, but when we report to the head office, to make it short, we only request the approval for significant products. I mean, for instance, we introduce here the funds or asset management fund type of product. This is a significant change. If we're talking about I would say a small derivatives, it is not a significant product. It's a less significant product for head office, so we don't need to report to the head office. Of course, the products have to respect this type of characteristic. Must be independent from other products. It should be commercializable. I don't know if it's proper English, but some other words. Yes.
I'm trying to understand. What are we saying when we say, i.e., there are the product features in order to. Sounds stupid, but I'm trying to understand the meaning of those product features. What is the impact?
These are the required characteristic of the product. It is more coming from the regulation.
It is a characteristic for the product in order to be
compliant. To
qualify as a product.
As a product also.
You see, if I look at the product can exist without depending on
other products or service. Yeah, that's the law. That
sounds to me.
They should be sufficiently
not to say a lot.
Independent. They should not rely on other products. Yes, I know it's a little bit theoretical, but how to enforce this, practically speaking, yes.
I think you must find these features in order for the requirement to apply that it is a new product which needs to go through all this process. If you have a procedure, for example, or part of a product which is not a product in itself according to these features, it does not need to be approved according to this policy. That was my understanding.
And to be reviewed and to be reassessed periodically and to have a dedicated team to manage it.
Can you imagine a product that can exist within any bank without depending on another product or service? I'm just trying to get a meaning.
Yes, a new derivatives, it's not linked to any other product. If you decide this is your cap to the floor for the interest, for instance, it is.
But it would be linked to a service in the dealing room.
No, it's the product itself. It's nothing. Of course, behind you have a lot of
we are saying
to operate the product to make sure it can happen, but it's not linked to other products. I know it looks a little bit difficult.
This comes from the
regulation and. Sorry. I can try maybe to dig deeper in these topics, but I was more concentrated on the process itself. So of course, like any other product in life, of course you need to design this product and authorize it, and after do the marketing and promotion. But what is important also now in this life cycle is the post appraisal. So you launch a product, fine. But you need after to reassess whether it was, I would say, a good idea to launch a product. If it's profitable, it's not bringing any additional unappraised or unassessed risk, for instance. And of course, at the moment in time, the product can also be just discontinued and decide to exit or to suspend the product for any reason. So I would say this is a comprehensive framework to manage the life cycle of a project. That's also the purpose of this new policy.
Quick question: do you have in mind a product that's in the pipeline?
Yes, we commodity trading, for instance. This is the next
bank.
For the bank. Yeah.
So you will go through this.
Of course. Yeah. Sure. And already the previous product that has.
Well, that was my question. Maybe later, if you could tell us for the IRS product, the new swap you have developed, how you were involved, or how risk management department was involved in practice in that.
Oh yeah, I can give you a lot of details about that. The problem is that we were involved. We were coordinating this. That's the issue. Now we request through this policy to have cooperation, as you can see on the independent risk assessment. We want to have a formal assessment of the legal and compliance department essentially, but also the clearing department if necessary, finance department and IT department to do also the assessment, because R&D was the only one performing this type of independent assessment of the problem. So now it's enlarging a little bit the scope. So of course, when all these assessments are done from the origination to the independent risk assessment, we go through the new product committee. So it's a formal committee where we sit together, we introduce the product, and people are asking questions, voting, and so on. And so if the new product committee approve a product, it goes to the authorized management in charge of the new product for official signatures and official approval notice, sent by the.
And you are part of this committee.
I'm the chairman of the new product committee.
You're the chairman.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know for whom.
Strict. It's not very easy to get his approval on this one.
Yeah.
I remember when we are doing this.
Well, I think I was looking at the 552 circular to see whether I could find these 4 features, but I didn't. So
it's more in the EBA. It's
not
more
from
new
EBA.
Yeah.
The CSF circular is more general. It says a new product is any modification to the activity. So it encompasses services and products. But then it gives very clear guidelines as to what the risk function should do. So that there should be a risk control, prior analysis of the objective, and completeness of the risks linked to that new product, etc.
But again, I think as Benoit said, we expect the revision of the 12552 to come to be more in line with the EBA we anticipate here.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we have two EBA guidelines. We have the EBA guidelines on this, plus the guidelines on the product for retail that will be inserted, because there is an alignment of the 2 EBA guidelines.
Okay. So we can, after, of course, we launch the product, but what is now key also, we did it in the past on a voluntary basis. So we were seeking for to understand whether the product was satisfactorily released, that there are no problems and so on. But it was more initiative from risk. Now it is more. It says here after 1 year launch, we reduced it to 6 months here in Luxembourg, just to follow up much more. And of course, whether a product should disappear from the product portfolio, we will have also to report to head office if it's a significant product. But otherwise, we need also to properly discontinue some service to see whether there are still some pending activities around the service, that you cannot cut a service like this if you have still contracts running and so on. So what are the changes? So what we have to do now is to produce a list. I should be honest, today if you ask me what are the products of the bank, I cannot give you a list like this, that's something we're working on it. But of course, risk management cannot really get all the information, especially from the past, but we have a pretty good view on what's going on in the bank as well. So we should assess Regulation change. So nothing really changed. Of course, this is the angle of the head office. Head office is now also making sure that they are aware of what are the products in the different entities overseas, you know. But of course, they give us some freedom for the less significant products. That makes sense also. They are not here behind us just to say, oh, you launch a cap floor derivatives or certain options or something like that. They give us a little bit of freedom. But of course, if we want to launch a new private banking products, very sophisticated and so on, they should be informed. That's the communication with the head office. Double review process and approval process. So of course, the bank, the governance for the approval process is generally go through the originator. The responsible of the product should sign the demand. There is always, like for instance, a credit, there is a committee, and after you have the review and the final approval from the general management. So we make sure that the governance is reinforced here. And of course, if you have to talk to the head office, we talk to the head office, but more for significant products.
In terms of governance, the approval process, does it stop at management?
Yes.
I.e., just does it have to be discussed at our committee?
For a new product?
I'm just asking because of that.
I leave that to you, but I don't think it's... I'll report the information to you. If you want, we can maybe take one example.
In terms of governance, does it... Is it
in terms of governance, we are helping the board. So
is it something that... has it got to be approved by the board?
I think...
For significant products, maybe...
I think if it would be such that it would change the business plan of the bank or the strategy, then I think indeed it should go to the board.
Yes, correct. As far as it impacts an overall strategy, yes.
It will do, if I look at the criteria.
No, because here we have 4 categories, A, B, C, D. A, B, it's for significant products. So we do custody business, we do fund management, we do wealth management. And other products like the one I just reported previously, like EMIR reporting. So we do the reporting for the clients, so for derivatives. So we take simply the derivatives information, and instead we do it on behalf of the client, because the client generally is not fully aware of it.
I'm talking about a new product.
That's a new product.
Commodities trading.
Commodity, yeah, but in this case it will be probably a C or a D product, because it's back to head office. So
okay, at what level does it need to go to get to the committee? Or it would be, my question is, at what level would it be good practice for it to go to the board? I think we need to clarify that.
Significant change, huge impact on the capital, huge impact on the RBB. Change of the strategy of the bank.
If I may, when I was reading the document, I made a couple of comments, and I think they're pertinent to this discussion. One was there should be, I think, defined either some powers of injunction or some powers of escalation, in particular for the compliance function, for instance, but possibly also for the risk function, where compliance says, I don't know, we're trying to do something here that goes against anti-money laundering, or has potential anti-money laundering risks, or you start getting in, or it could be
MiFID.
Exactly. And so my second comment, by the way, was we should think of not just new products, but also new customer segments, because it's not the same thing to offer certain products to institutional customers or corporate customers, or to offer them to private banking or retail customers, because then you start to get into MiFID II compliance issues. You have PSD2, and therefore I think maybe the one thing that I would think about, and I think this, by the way, is a very comprehensive and very good document. It's quite evolved. But perhaps one area that one would want to think about is there's always going to be tension between the commercial side that wants to develop new products, understandably. I mean, we need to generate revenues, and on the other hand, the compliance or the risk functions which may see downsides to new customer segments, new types of, and how do we manage that? I suppose the first level is this committee that you have, internal new products committee, and then there's your general management. But I think typically the compliance function will have a direct line to. There's no compliance committee in this bank, is there? So to the board in that case, and your risk line will have a line in this case to the BRC, which is a committee put in place by the board, so it's also technically to the board. And I think and I don't know the culture of the, I may be proposing here something that doesn't fit well into the culture of this bank, but I think it's important to think about these escalation routes for certain functions or certain, I mean, how do you define when something becomes A or B, or when the risk is, can risk say, I decide that this is a B, or can compliance say, this to me is an issue that I cannot just sort of leave at the level of the NPC, I want this to go one step higher.
It's a risk to decide whether it should be A, B, C, or D.
Compliance, I think, should also have that kind of right. Again, I don't know the compliance function in this house, but depending on the products and the customer base, compliance, I think, needs to be able to say, this is not a small change. I want this to be escalated.
I think it's a very good remark. I think that within this committee we should probably decide that, as you did in your quarterly report, you should include any new products, so that this committee is informed of new products which are being introduced, so we at least know that it's happened, that we can have this type of discussion on these new products. And the other point is that I think that to some extent it's probably covered by the document, because in the policy under 1.4 it says that in case of significant changes resulting from exceptional transactions between group mergers and acquisitions, that's obviously exceptional, but then setting up structures, new branches, single purpose vehicles, changes to IT systems or the risk management framework or procedure. And I think there, at least, the risk management framework or procedure, there we have it, and changes to the bank organization, the relevant departments are responsible to escalate the information to the general management and to the board of directors. This paragraph obviously mixes things which are totally changing the whole bank, but I think it says risk management framework, and maybe we should read that, if we agree on the reading, that means that indeed if there is a product which is fundamentally or significantly changing the risk framework of the bank, then it must be escalated. And I think we should, in this committee, when we are informed of new products, ask the question, is this in line with our risk profile as we know it? And if the answer is yes, we can say it's okay, and if the answer is no, then we may need to escalate it to the board.
Peter, I may just make one remark, if you would. Yes. That risk management, we shouldn't interpret risk management as that which is under the purview of the risk management department, because technically compliance is outside the risk management department. That's and right. Compliance is also a risk, there are also compliance risks, and so we should and again, I don't know how the compliance function is organized in this bank, but I think we should be aware that some of the risks could come from that side of the bank.
Should we,
and so
should we try to include the compliance element in here? Is that something which I think
they are mentioned a couple of times in other parts of the document, I think.
It's very one of the significant changes, because in the past all the risk assessment were more on the shoulders of the risk solely, and now we introduce, the formal risk assessment of the compliance function. That's a significant change. But to come back to your comments about the pressure, commercial pressure, that is the purpose of a control function. First, to resist to this, but also to support, to a certain extent, that new products can be introduced at the bank in a controlled manner.
To find a way to make it controlled.
It's not to find the way, to make sure the way is very clear and controlled. This is also my role. When they have new product coming, says, okay, you have the people in place, you have your procedures. Can I see? Did you test everything? I'm playing a little bit the role of a project manager, but I want them to fulfill my requirements or the requirements of my team. It says, okay, you must do that, you must do that, And so once everything is being really organized this way, and that's, you're right, I'm a very annoying person for this, but that's my role. The bank pays me for doing that. Not just for the pleasure of doing that, but I want the bank to be well controlled. When everything is being well prepared, we submit this to the committee. And the committee members, we have representatives from all the operations, the back office, the legal person, are attending this committee. And if they disagree, I take that into account. So it is not one person deciding, also it's a group deciding. Usually it's the legal person is the person who says, hey, you missed this part, did you agree with this? And the other says, well, no, sorry, I'm not a legal person, so we should. And so we come back to the committee on a regular basis. Sometimes it's the back office. Says, oh, sorry, I cannot do that. I need to set up something, I was not aware, blah, blah. So it's changing. People are more and more aware of it. So you see, this is an iterative process. And when we go to the management, we go with a solution that is well managed, well designed, and with time and resource, but we are ready.
Okay.
If I may, I just added something, because this new product committee actually is not with the department level, it is the bank's level. The reason why the management rather choosing the chief risk officer of the bank being the chairman of that one is because when we're facing the new product, when we try to get approval from them, we were rather taking from the conservative point of view, which is control it. It's not, because it is not the frontline department head in charge of this one. Like Mark mentioned, we have a lot of arguments during this committee. My understanding is usually before even submitted those proposals to the committee, we need to file a report. That is the department who's initiated the products file explaining everything. And at this process, all the other departments like the risk, the compliance has already involved into the process. Then they come to the committee asking questions, leading, but that's committee leading by Mark. What I'm saying is, this is not only within his kind of department. That risk, that is not only when we pass the new products, it's not only within the risk department. It is involve all the bank's different perspective and all the functions trying to challenge someone, because the bank really doesn't want anything create the problems for us. So I just added this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. For this. So the next, of course, is the policy itself. So I don't know, have collected already and implemented the change in the document. If you have further comments, I think either you can communicate to me. It will be submitted anyway to the board. But we expect.
I think if anyone has further comments, we should try to bring those to Marc quickly over the next few days and copy the other members. I think every changes which I've seen are I think clear, and they clearly enhance the document. I think I would, in view of the comment which Christian made on the compliance, I'm going to just have another look at it, because I think it would be interesting maybe to just see whether it is properly covered, or whether maybe at 1.4 we should suggest to add the compliance aspect in a little bit more, in a clearer, in a more express way. I think that I've been received assurance that I think it's probably dealt with and it's taken into account, but maybe that's something we should look at. So otherwise, subject to that, yes.
Practically speaking, there are templates behind this process, and there are a lot of documentation, and part of these templates is, of course, there is a sign-off list where we ask formally the head of compliance to sign off the products.
Okay.
So we engage there.
Well, we should definitely, I think, then in our minutes state that we have discussed this and that we have received assurance that indeed compliance will also sign off on the documents.
From a practical point of view, your comments will be welcome by the end of this week, because we will circulate the board back to the board members.
Okay. That's understood.
Probably on Monday, Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you. Brings us to the next point, I think, the business continuity report.
Yes, I've made a presentation also.
Okay.
Just to keep you updated, to bring this operational risk to the attention of the board members. I don't know if you have been in contact in the past with the business continuity of the bank, informed about this. I don't know. Not so much. So maybe it's take the opportunity to inform the members of the board, but the members also of the risk committee. Of course, I'm not going to enter into many details. Maybe it's not very interesting for you, but just I give you some information that this process is in place at the bank. I am owning this process. I'm quite experienced also with the business continuity from a previous experience. We complete on an annual basis the business impact assessment of the bank. So it's done on an annual basis. So we go through the different departments, the strategic and key processes of the bank to assess the recovery objective, recovery time objective, and so on. So we develop a kind of strategy. We update a policy that can at a moment in time, and Benoit told me that I should also introduce this policy to the board, so I will do it to you next year. We perform the tests on a regular basis. The last one was end of October. The test was very successful. But what is important here to inform that the current provider of this BCP and DRP, BCP stands for Business Continuity Plan, and DRP stands for Disaster Recovery Plan. So it's more the people on the BCP side, and on the DRP, the IT. So if we have a problem on the IT side, we invoke the DRP. If we have a problem with people, we need to move them somewhere else, we call a BCP. And those two services were so far ensured by IBM Luxembourg, but IBM informed us that they want to discontinue.
Do we know why?
The service. It's for what I've understood, it's a regional strategy, Europe strategy to discontinue this type of service of IBM. So I think they will concentrate more on the cloud computing and all these things. So they said we don't want, but they we received this letter end of March or April, so it's very short notice. So we had to rush to find another provider. We found a provider, so we are quite lucky to have in Luxembourg excellent companies. In this case, it will be Post and EBRC. So it's just a fully subsidiary of Post. But of course, we need now to set up these things, because you cannot set up this in a blink, in a quick moment. But the project is going well, so it's a joint venture with R&D, risk management, and IT departments. So some figures here about the tests, and some figures about the BIA. So just to give you a figures, 32% of the business function of the bank must be restored the day of a disaster, the high priority business. So 1/3 of the bank's activity, the bank process must be restored quickly. These are the business impact assessments. On the left side, you can see human resource. So after the hours of a disaster at the bank, we need around 15%, 14-15%. That is the very minimum to operate the basic and strategic operations of the bank. But for the moment, you have to understand that we have only 10 recovery seats with IBM, and with the new provider, EBRC, we will have 25 seats, so we will be much more comfortable, and also for information at a lower cost. So what I would like to draw your attention here is that we are in the grace period because the BCP service has stopped end of October, and the new BCP service with EBRC should be in line in March, April. It would be probably online in February, but I prefer to say April. But so we are in the grey moment, and I discussed also this point yesterday with the CSSF. They understand the situation. The advantage is that we have 3 buildings here. So if we have a problem with this building, we can easily relocate 5-6 people to the 2 other buildings, and so they can easily access the production service. But for the DRP, the good news is that we were able to extend the support from IBM until June next year. So for the pure technical part, there are no issue. For the more operational part, if something happened to one of our 3 buildings, we can relocate the 5 or 6 key persons on a temporary basis to one of our buildings. I know it's not a very beautiful solution. I assess the risk as low because I don't expect this building to burn, I hope. And for the sake of transparency, I inform you about this fact.
If I may,
sure.
I think it's not unimportant to put that in the minutes, because indeed when you read the documents one has the impression that there's a 6-month hiatus where there is no BCP, but as you told me a couple of weeks ago and as you mentioned now, the fact that we can shift people from one building to another at least should give the bank some reassurance that it is covered during that 6 months period. And maybe, since it's not in the document, I would put it somewhere in the minutes of the committee.
It is not a good, perfect solution. Again, I
but
reported
it is a solution.
very formally yesterday to the CSSF. Okay, at least they know. But the person I explained the same, and he said, okay, I think we can live with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's some more information about the business impact assessment. As you can see, just to take the left side of this presentation, these are the human resources we need after the hours of a disaster, days, weeks, or after. And I always say to the management that we can run the bank with 60 people instead of 160. Because it would be a lot of pressure. So generally after we should cover up to 90% of the bank service, including the audit functions and all these things. But it's very stable over years.
This big business impact assessment, who does it?
I do it.
And it's reviewed?
With the department head.
And is there a second opinion on it?
Only me. But again, we can...
No, I'm just thinking aloud.
Yeah, sure.
Usually it's the kind of thing where from time to time it's important.
I report this information also to the risk committee of the bank. And if there are all the people are on the table, including management, so to challenge the information.
Yeah.
But honestly, the figures are very stable. As you can see here, these are the figures. I started this process in 2015 when I arrived at the bank. And as you can see, it's slightly progressing until 2017, but then after it's very stable. So it also, I'm not saying it demonstrates anything, but it demonstrates that for doing what we do, over the last 4 years, it's always the same number of people. We don't have
At the same time, our number of people has increased a lot.
Yeah, because...
And the volume, the business we do has evolved quite a bit.
Yeah. But it's for very strategic.
Yeah.
So all payments and everything. So
Yeah.
all the commercial parts, marketing side, regulatory reporting, these are not included because they are not key for the bank.
In the very short term.
Yeah, in the very short. After, you see, we need 60 people, of course.
Yeah.
It means 60 human persons, so not taking holidays, not taking training, not being sick, not being, I don't want to draw any conclusion, I just give you the figures. And this is the evolution of the recovery time objective versus the business critical. So of course, it makes sense that they are more or less aligned. So if you have a high risk or strategic process at the bank, you want them to be recovered quickly. That makes sense also with this type of information. So the strategy for next year, the new provider is selected, it's Group Post. The good point, there are some good news also, the DRP and the VCP will be at the same location, so we will save some money for instance, the telecom, so because everything will be concentrated. It will be in one of our beautiful data center of Luxembourg, Tier 4, which is state-of-the-art data center in Luxembourg. It will be probably in Windhof. Windhof, Kapellen Windhof. It's where you have a
If something happens to that center, that will be catastrophic because
they are highly.
Everybody's there.
Everybody's there.
It's highly resilient because we can easily go to Kehl or to Betzdorf easily. It doesn't matter actually. We'll be located there, but if something happened there, they switch immediately to Betzdorf. Kehl. Sorry. Betzdorf has no recovery positions. So now we'll have finally, that is something I wish I had for a long time, 25 recovery seats. So 25 people will be able to work at the same time, which is a big improvement compared to the 10 seats. I have planned to do more sophisticated BCM techniques like emergency cards to distribute, because if you are out of the grid, you cannot access any computer, any information, so I want to start to distribute, emergency card with key numbers and so on, put some hotlines, telephone cascade exercise and all those things. I'm not promising this, I will try to do it. So, as I said, there is a great period at the moment, but the DRP is still in place with IBM, so I expect more a problem on the IT side, especially with the work on the roads that can cut the network, so we can switch to the DRP. Okay, to make it very short because we are sorry.
Just a quick comment, if I may.
Yes, of course.
I think it would be useful because I mentioned this. Typically, from what I've seen anyway, it's the kind of thing, certainly not every year, but from time to time, it's good to have an independent review.
Okay.
I don't know if we go back in time, when was the last independent review, but I think it's a kind of good practice.
Okay.
To have it, but that's for management to consider.
We can ask auditors to have a special assessment.
But it's probably better to wait until the new system is in place, because now we are a little bit in a transition period.
Does the board or the BRC ever get a presentation from IT? The department in charge of information systems?
Not recently.
No.
Might be another thing to sort of think about.
IT is very strategic as well.
Not urgent.
Okay.
You want to have the IT person to come to the next board?
Maybe not the next one, but I think
some stage,
it's not bad practice to have.
You want to talk to IT person?
And also to have them explain the system, but also the disaster recovery and how that works, and so that we
challenges and risks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then I think we come to the point of assessment of the risk management function. That is something which, according to our charter, we should do every year. I think that if we have, well, we should first go through maybe what was done. So we received 2 documents. One is really a summary of when we met, what documents we looked at, what documents we approved during our first year of functioning, and then we have a more general document which I think, in my view, is maybe a little bit too long because it repeats a number of things, and we may work on that also for the future to have something which may be a little bit simpler. But I think it's important because it focuses on liquidity, which I think is one of the main issues which we have also heard that the CSSF is looking at very, very seriously. So that's definitely something we should concentrate on for the future. And then it generally reviews all the various risks we have looked at and what we have done as a work. I think that over the year, I believe that we have done quite a good way. I think that we, this committee did not exist before. I think that we have a very good contact to Mark, to management obviously as well. But I think that our exchanges were very good. You discuss with each of us individually. You discuss with us together. You're open to questions. So I think that if from everything which I hear, which I heard, which I have been able to look at, I think that I would positively assess the work of the risk management department. I think that it is obviously something where we will continue to work for an improvement in the future. So I think we work on it on every document we see, on every. I think that especially you are receptive to comments, which I think is also very important. And I think that we should certainly now maybe I open for discussion for a couple of minutes to also ask you your view, whether you think there is anything missing from this committee, and what are the points we should really maybe focus on also next year. But before you say something, Maurice, Christian, anything to add to that?
One thing I wanted to mention, which has nothing to do with the past, but more for next year, is whether it would be worthwhile considering any risk elements to do with our move to the new building as a specific item. I'm not sure whether it should fall within that scope or some other scope, but I just mentioned it because I think that it is something we need to look at, the risk associated with the move next year.
Yes.
Which also impacts IT.
Absolutely. Just a little.
Because from what I hear, it might not take place in one go, it will also go in phases. So we need to make sure. But I don't know exactly how it can be covered.
On the IT side, I'm working closely with the department because I'm very familiar with the IT questions and things like that. So I really work closely with them because I think it's very important. Of course, we can locate people there without heating and so on. As long as the PC are working, I must feel comfortable. So,
That's the one.
Christian, is there anything you would like to add?
No. Well, I mean, what I appreciate is the very open discussion that happens around the table, and I think one important step, I don't remember who put it in here, was that I think it's very important to have management around the table. We saw it today, we saw it last time with Mr. Hall, and I think that was a good decision for the working of the committee, and perhaps to think about whether some other functions might from time to time be invited to make a presentation, be it IT, be it compliance. Now again, I don't know if that falls on some of them. Maybe should do it at board level, not at BRC level. So,
yes, well, I think on that, yes, obviously for our first meeting in 2019, we'll have our big reports, I think, coming, the annual report, the ICAP, ILAP. I think on these sessions we should probably try to focus on that, because these will be very full sessions, but we've seen that especially at the end, last time we had the operational risk management, we had new products here. The idea of keeping another theme coming at maybe not the March, but certainly from June, September and December, we should definitely do that, and we'll keep in mind IT, business continuity, and maybe at some point move. That we simply look at what everything which is part of the move, and we just need to find the right time during the year for that. Mark, is there anything which you would like to add?
No, very very officially, I would say that the risk management function of the bank is not one individual; it's a team. So I'm extremely lucky to have the best team of the bank. Yes, I know the bank, and I have the best team of the bank. That's very true. The people around this team are very good people. A special thanks also to the GM that let me do my work. Very well. I've never had any problem, any pressure from management. They really respect this independent function. I think it's important to very officially say it at least once a year.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. And I would also add a word for you, because thank you also very much for your kind help. I think we did it well this year. It's the first year, but I think we have not missed so much things. I think we touch a lot of aspects. And from CSSF, I discussed yesterday about improvement of the governance of the bank, and they said, I should not maybe say it to you, but they are very satisfied and very happy to have you on the board. Okay. The guy said, keep it for you. I said, yes, of course. I will keep it for me. Because but that's just don't limit it.
Next time we meet, then we say, thank you for telling us.
No. Mark told us that you were so happy. That's it. So thank you very much. And of course, it is true that it is honestly on my side time consuming, but the money or the time we spend is we get more from these investments. And I will try to do my best, especially on the annual report from the risk management function, which is one of my numerous weak points to improve, but I will try to make it. I will also organize visits, I think, to branches.
Yes, if we have time to
when the weather
at some stage, that might be a good idea.
Maybe outside, maybe the quarterly reporting.
Yes.
I can organize a cruise visit, maybe Brussels.
Well, Brussels, I think, would be interesting. First of all, because we, on the board level, at least at the level of compliance, we had a number of issues. We see that new products are coming from Brussels. And it's the easiest to get there. So I think if indeed, if we do the calendar for next year, and we would try to find a day to go to Brussels, I would very much welcome it.
Yeah.
I also think that it's maybe you could bring one or two members of your team, because I think that when you have a day like that where you exchange. It helps. That's a very good.
Mr. Chairman, I suppose that this memorandum on the achievements will be escalated to the board. Do you intend to escalate it or not?
I think we can simply. I would simply make a report that, as part of the risk committee, we also did an assessment where we reviewed a little bit what was done, because I don't think that it.
But only this one, the simple one, not the full report.
I think we can. Yes, you can. If you want to, maybe that's
Summary.
more the summary. That's a good idea to.
This one.
Yes,
Yeah,
if you,
you-
yeah, I have no problem
Okay.
for that to be given to the board. So they know what we. Yeah, very good.
Okay, allez, merci.
Yes, we have the date. So maybe you look at. Is there any date which doesn't fit? Then we let Mark know.
Oh, shall I haven't had a chance to go through them yet. So.
I think manager still want to give you